Hi everybody, Dan Bickford here for our latest episode of Carolina Rides. Before we get to our featured presentation, I do want to remind you, you can find us on social media. Through here, you can interact with us. We've got information we put up about weekly car shows across the region, and we will also accept gladly any ideas you may have about guests or particular people to feature in the car community across the Western Carolinas and, northeastern Georgia, why not too? And we've done some stuff around Charlotte, so we'll do the region while we're at it. You can find us on Facebook at Carolina Rides. Our Instagram account is Carolina Rides Official WSPA, and you can also find us on YouTube at Carolina Rides WSPA. It's possible you're watching me that way right now. If you're on WSPA Plus, the streaming service, we have all the old episodes, and occasionally we'll put up some other content on the YouTube page as well. So please join us there. For our guest today, I would like to welcome Paul Zimmerman. He's the current Vice President and incoming President of the Foothills British Car Club of South Carolina. How you doing today?
I am doing well, Dan. Thank you. It's fall in the Carolinas. I've got a little British car with I can take the top down on. Life is about as perfect as it gets with that scenario.
Well, what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the British Car Club of South Carolina and kind of the British car community of the region. How long have you been involved?
So I've been involved with the Foothills British Car Club. That's the main one that I'm involved with for about 2.5 years now, since I bought my car, 1964 Morgan Plus 4. And it's a great community. I mean, we have our club, the Foothills British Car Club. There's the British Car Club of Western North Carolina, which is Hendersonville based. And then there's also a club based out of Spartanburg, the Southeastern British Motor Car Owners Group. So really a nice, active British car community in this part of the world.
And how long have you been involved with them?
So I've been involved with them for about 2.5 years now. And I lived in Los Angeles. My wife and I lived out there for a while. And then when we moved here, I had a Triumph TR6 out there for a little while. Always wanted a Morgan since I was 16. Sat in my first one when I was 16 years old and went, someday this is going to happen. And 2.5 years ago, it finally did. And that was sort of a moment to go for it. And then I joined all three clubs and just got really involved with the Foothills Club more than just about any of the other clubs, even though I participate with all of them. And, 2.5 years, having a wonderful time, just a great, great, great group of people.
Tell us a little bit about the club. What are some of the things that you guys kind of do, kind of the camaraderie, and what are the advantages of, especially with British cars, actually having that community?
Well, it's nice to be with a group of people whose all cars leak oil. That is the first step in the whole thing that makes it work really well. But kidding aside, you mentioned camaraderie. I think that's number one for the FBCC. It's just an amazing group of guys and women and it's all kinds of different people. The club started in 1994, 31 years now. Started basically out of Anderson, essentially, and now encompasses the entire upstate from Anderson. I live in Landrum, South Carolina, so we're kind of broad range in that sense. We have a couple things that we love to do. First of all, we love to drive our cars. We do not have quote-unquote garage queens in our stables. I drive my car probably once a week, and we probably have a weekly car drive. We go have lunch somewhere. We decide to go have a picnic, whatever it is that we make up our minds we want to do. And those can all be very spontaneous. The other thing that we have that we're really happy with is a thing called Jack's Place. Named after Jack Donegan, who was a member who donated the contents of his garage when he passed. And behind the what's called the lawyer, or the motorcycle lawyer in Greenville, Kirk Gibson, we have it's Kirk. I can't remember. I got the last name wrong. Sorry, Kirk. Anyway, it's a 2-car garage, basically, with 2 lifts in it and all the tools and everything we need. And the third Saturday of every single month, we meet at that garage. And you can bring your car in. You can work on it there. You can have people help you work on it there. I'll give you a great example, Dan. When I first got my Morgan, I'm an amateur mechanic at best. And I said, okay, I want to learn how to work on my own car. That was part of the excitement behind it. So I took it to Jack's Place. And I drove up and I said, guys, I'm new. I've never met you. I want to get my car in a lift. And next thing I know, I had 10 expert British car people going through my car, looking at it, giving me punch lists. This is what you need to do, what you need to do. So again, camaraderie. We love to work on our cars and we love to drive them. That's the biggest thing right there.
For those who may be interested in, for example, a British vehicle of, really any of those older ilks, especially, the MGs, the Triumph, something you can throw the top down on. I know a lot of questions immediately come to mind because, we're talking cars that, there's not really a whole lot of support for. And you just mentioned some of that. Just how really important it is to have that network around you.
You hit the nail on the head. It's incredibly important. It's not like you can go down to your corner garage and they can work on it. There are some mechanics who certainly can. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. And there are some British car specialists, but they are quirky. These cars. My car is 61 years old. Most of these cars are from the 60s and the 70s, maybe the early 80s or something like that. So they are quirky in that sense of the word. So if you've got support from people who've either owned the car before, know how to work on the car before, know what to look for, what to expect, how to source parts, how to source materials. So yeah, if you want to get a British car, my advice would be for actually join a club first and have the members help you source a car. That's really a good way to go. But yeah, it's incredibly important to have that support network.
Yeah, that is a good thing to mention. Let's talk a little bit more about the club and some of the things you guys do. You mentioned Jack's Place. Obviously, you guys are involved in several other things. I know you've got a couple events that'll be coming up here in the not-too-distant future as well.
Yeah, we do. We've got quite a few events coming up. Our website, which is fbccsc.org, is probably the best way to go. We have our full calendar. I see it up on the screen now. Thank you very much for that. Go to the full calendar there, Dan, for just a moment. And if you scroll down that, you can kind of see upcoming events that we have. There's our calendar, but if you go a little bit lower than that, you'll see just upcoming events that we have and links and talks of things that we do. These are the ones that we plan, and this is one of the things to understand about the Foothills British Car Club. We don't really have an events coordinator. What we do is we do a Google Groups email chain with our club is what we do. And in that sense, any member can communicate with any member at any given moment. That's incredibly useful if you're looking for a part, if your car's broken down, you need some help, but also if you want to do an event. It's a Monday, for example. And all of a sudden an email comes out and goes, you know what, guys, the weather Thursday looks fabulous. I want to go to lunch at Brevard. And the next thing you know, we got to drive and we're heading up to Brevard for lunch. So this is some of the planned ones that we have. And there's a couple I know that you wanted to highlight. That's one right there. This is the Victoria Valley Vineyards up in Table Rock area. Really nice vineyard. We did an event up there not too long ago. We just went for lunch. Had a wonderful time. The Kensington family, who are the owners, could not have been nicer to us. And we were like, you know what? Let's do a cruise in. So with a cruise-in, the thing to understand, this is not a car show. There's no judging. There's nothing like that. So if you have a British car of any kind, any make, any year, even if you're not a club member, we would love to have you join us. Just show up about 11 o'clock at Victoria Valley Vineyard. No, we're asking you to pre-register. There is some registration further down on this webpage. But the main thing is just come and hang out with us, have some lunch. There's going to be live music. It's going to be a real fun event. This is the first time we're doing it. If it's successful, we're going to do it again. So it's a great event, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Now, you mentioned open, everybody, you got a British car, come on in. I also noticed in that fine print, open to the public. I'm interested in British cars. There are other people who just want to see the cars. I'm sure they're welcome to come on down and kind of enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. It's open to the public if you just want to come spectate. Victoria Valley Vineyards, obviously serving wine. They've got a great lunch menu. They're going to have a food truck there as well. And just come hang out. We're there to answer questions. If you're interested in a British car, for example, well, this would be a great event to come to. Come meet us. Tell us what your dreams are. Look at a bunch of different cars. This would be a great place to come to. Yeah, we welcome the public to come to anything that we absolutely do.
I'm sure you've come across members of the public with things like that before. What are some of the questions you get? Because again, a lot of these cars, these are not things you see on the road every day.
No, they're not. That's for sure. We get questions a lot. A lot of the responses we get is, oh gosh, I had one of those when I was in college. I had one when I was in high school. I had one when I was younger. I've always wanted one. We get a lot of that kind of situation. Quite honestly, a lot of the questions we get are, what exactly is that? That's a lot of the questions we get right there, because like you said, you don't see them a lot, particularly if you go to general car shows. There's a show that we go to up in Tryon all the time which benefits the Foothills Humane Society, called Wheels for Whiskers. And we go there and we show up, and with a lot of other general cars. And we get a lot of people saying that, what exactly are these cars? Can you tell me about them? Are they hard to drive, hard to work on? So those are a lot of the questions we get, are just general inquiries of, what exactly are these cars and what's the history behind them?
I also know you've got another big event coming up involving Veterans Day.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of our members, Dennis Somerville, started this about 7 years ago. I see you've got it up on the website. This is to honor our veterans, obviously, and this is a Veterans Day drive. We do this in conjunction with one of our sister clubs up in North Carolina, the British Car Club of Western North Carolina. We begin the joint drive at the Dollar General just outside of Brevard, and we actually start it more locally at a place called Judd's Brown Building, which is a member of ours, and that's sort of the place where a lot of drives start. This way we can pick up members as we move through. We do a nice drive, and then Dennis arranges a really lovely ceremony honoring the veterans in our club, the veterans who just come to show up. And that's the ceremony that we then have up at, I think it's Mika's Restaurant in Cashiers is where we have it, and you'll see all kinds of different cars, and there's a photograph there of an event from a couple of years ago. So an event that's near and dear to our hearts, a lot of veterans in our club. Dennis is a veteran himself, and so this is a wonderful, wonderful event just to come join us if you want to come on the drive, or just meet us up there. And like I said, you can go to our website and all the information's there. So this is a drive that's become very, very, very popular, and for very good reasons, obviously.
And as we've talked about too, anybody who's interested in any of this, they can go ahead right to your website and find out all the information, and also get information on how to get involved.
Exactly, yeah. The website is our best. We've been actually kind of overhauling the website over the last couple months, but that's the website. It's just fbccsc.org. Calendar is there. You can join. Just click to join right there. Become a member. You can send us a general inquiry. And one thing I'd like to stress, Dan, is that you do not have to own a British car to become a member of our club. And that's for several different reasons. The one thing I think that we all do have in common in terms of the cars that we own is they're all the fairly kind of quintessential two-seater roadster. You mentioned that you all own a Miata, for example. Well, there's a lot of Miatas in our club, Alfa Romeos, Fiat, some of the two-seater Jaguars, Mercedes. So all of those general cars are welcome. So if you have a love of two-seater open roadster, quintessential style roadsters, we welcome everybody in any car make and model in our car. We love to just have you join us and just come hang out with us.
Sounds like fun. We are going to come back here in just a moment. We will talk with Paul a little bit more about the whimsical nature of some of these cars and just kind of the British car scene in general. Stay with Carolina Rides. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina Rides. Joining me once again, Paul Zimmerman, Vice President and soon-to-be President of the Foothills British Car Club of South Carolina. Now, what was the event, the particular car that got you interested in British cars in the first place?
That's a great question. So first of all, British cars and logic are oxymorons. That's the thing we should probably put out right out of the gate. So for me, Dan, I've always enjoyed cars. As I mentioned earlier in the first segment, I was not a mechanic. My father was not a mechanic by any stretch of the imagination. He was a model railroader. He could do that and did a beautiful jobs with that. So I didn't grow up in a mechanic's household, but I was intrigued by automobiles. My parents are from the Netherlands, so I grew up in a very European household. I was drawn towards Formula One. Racing, and I was drawn towards more the European style cars, and really liked British cars all my life. Triumphs, MG, we all knew back then. And then when I was 16 years old, I still remember it. We were visiting my family in the Netherlands, a little town called Eindhoven. And my cousin and her husband had bought this car. And they said, we bought this little two-seater British roadster, and Case, or her husband, wanted to take me out in it. And I said, sure, I'll do that. Why not? Sounds like a lot of fun. So he pulls this car out of the garage, and it was a Morgan. I had no clue what a Morgan was. I had never heard of a Morgan. And I got in this car in the passenger seat. He was driving, obviously. And he took me out around the Dutch countryside, and I absolutely fell in love. And I said, one of these days, I'm going to own a Morgan. And I was living in Los Angeles, and my wife and I had met shortly obviously later than that. And we were living in apartments, and we weren't really not a space to own a car like that or anything along those lines. But it was always kind of in the back of my brain. Someday that Morgan's going to happen. And about 3.5 years ago, finally, things just kind of aligned as they do with life's dreams. And it was really funny because my wife always knew that I wanted this, and she likes British cars as well. Her mother was British. And I've been thinking about it, looking for the Morgan at that point in time. And we're sitting there in the evening one day, having dinner, and she looks at me and she says, "You know what? You need to start looking for your Morgan." And I went, "Okay." That works. And I looked for about 6 or 7 months and hunted and just did a lot of research and talked to people who owned them. And the one that I have now came into my life. It's a 1964 four-seater plus four, British Racing Green, Westminster Green to be exact. Broken it through a dealer in Copake, New York, Morgan Spares of New England. And it's my happy place. There's no other word I can even go to give you. I mean, put me in that car, top down, on a fall or winter or spring day when the weather is nice, and tuck me up into those mountain roads, and I'm just in absolute heaven. So that was the first one that came into my life. And about 6 months later, I'm restoring a 1934 Morgan Super Sports three-wheeler. So because you never have more than one. They're like Lay's potato chips,
Now tell me, and explain for those who are not aware, Morgans are a little different because of how they use wood.
Yes, they do. It has a wooden frame, not a wooden chassis, by the way. They are. The Morgan, basically, it's a metal chassis, essentially the metal part, obviously, that connects it all. Mine's called a ladder frame, for if you want to get geeky about it. But the basic car itself that the metal goes onto, the fenders or wings as they're called, the back things, it's made out of ash. And it's been that way since 1909 when HFS started the Morgan factory. His first car was a three-wheeler, tailor-driven car. And if you go to the Morgan factory today, and that's an interesting part, unlike most British marques, Morgan still makes cars. And if you go to the factory, which I did 2 years ago, they still make them out of wood, is still a big part of it. There you go. They still make them out of wood. And there's still guys in there using hand tools, third or fourth generation, still made a lot of the same way. That is a 2025 plus four. And if you look at my plus four, you're going to see instantly that it is a Morgan four-wheeler car. The identity and the look of them and the feel of them is unlike anything you've ever seen. In fact, we recently did a MOG South meet, Morgan Owners Group South, that I'm involved with, up in Asheville around Autumn in the Mountains. Huge, wonderful show up in Mills River. We had 19 Morgans at the Autumn in the Mountains car show. The oldest was a 1933 family runabout Super Sport, or a three-wheeler, and the newest one was a 2025 plus four, because you can now buy a brand new Morgan in America again, along with a three-wheeler, the Super Sports.
Now, Morgan is a very small car company,
Yes.
and a lot of people, there are a lot of people who probably haven't heard of it, as opposed to some of the other names, particularly cars that we saw in the 60s, 70s, and to some extent the 80s. And now we're talking about a British car scene where there's not a whole lot of British makes anymore. You've still got the Morgan, it's a small company. Tell us a little bit about some of the names that have come and gone and what happened.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Morgan still exists. Jaguar still exists. Obviously, they're still a company. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, they're not really the same company it was way back when, but they're still around to a degree. I mean, you can still get Land Rover, and there's still some. And there's a newer MG being built, but it's not MG. But yeah, I mean, in its heyday, I mean, there was numerous car factories in England that built these British cars, these wonderful little British sports cars for British roads, and they became incredibly popular in America. Probably in the 50s, a lot of it was due after World War II when American servicemen were over there and they saw the cars. A lot of the cars came back with the servicemen as well. The two big ones are obviously MG and Triumph are large ones that you certainly see, and there are certainly others. But, they sort of, in the 50s, they were all independent car companies, Triumph and MG, and Morgan existed back then, and, all the different marques that were there, Aston Martin. And then what began to happen in the 60s and even in the 70s, they sort of all began sort of being gathered into this one company called British Leyland. And it just became sort of a mass-produced car that really sort of lost the feel of what they really were supposed to be. The other thing that happened, the United States was a very, very large market for these cars. And we began, and certainly in the 70s in the United States, different environmental regulations, different safety regulations, bumpers and things along those lines, all for good reason. I'm not saying anything about that one way or the other, but that also made it difficult to make these cars enter the U.S. market. And then it just series of happenings economically in England during the 70s, particularly in the 80s, and essentially they just fell by the wayside and they went away, which is a shame because they still are just wonderful cars to drive and own.
Are we? I know the Morgan's one of them. Are there any British cars that are being built today that are actually owned by a British company anymore? Because you think of some of the non-spoiler names like Rolls-Royce and Bentley.
Yeah.
I mean, Volkswagen and BMW own those. It's just what's left in terms of an actual British car.
I mean, there really isn't. I mean, even the Mini Cooper's BMW, and they're wonderful cars. And even Morgan actually is the majority interest is an Italian company at this point in time. The family who owned it for all those years just to get some investment involved. So that is majority owned, even though the family is very active, and they are staying true to the Morgan name. But Morgan is, to my knowledge, really the last of the really cars that's still made in England, and they're handcrafted. I mean, these things are literally handmade. They're amazing vehicles. But yeah, it is sad. It'd be nice to see. MG is making a car, obviously under a different company name. I've seen one. They certainly look to be lovely. It'd be nice to see them. These Marquis resurrected again. They're wonderful cars, and I think the Mazda Miata. I remember when it first came out, Dan, and everyone was like, who's going to buy one of these? Who's ever going to buy a Mazda Miata? Well, fast forward, 25 years? So there's a market for these cars, and I think there would be if someone would make them.
Yeah, occasionally somebody comes along and will spit something out that will try to rival it or come close anyway. But yeah, Mazda's had that all to themselves, and they've done a pretty good job of it, just kind of pretending to be a British car, kind of the same soul.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of our members actually have Miatas. We have members who age out of caring for a British car because, they do take work. I mean, this isn't something you put in your garage and start it up and go. I always joke with my wife. I say, I'm going to take the Morgan out, and I said, it's going to take me 20 minutes just to get the thing running and up and running. It starts, it does all the things, but it's got to choke. I've got to warm it up. I've got to check the oils. You got to check the fluids. It has this thing called carburetors. You probably remember those. So you've got to keep an eye on those. But that's also the joy of these cars. It's an incredibly tactile driving experience. I mean, there's no Bluetooth in my car. There's no power steering. There's no power brakes. It's got a wooden dash. I've got a tachometer in front of me, a speedometer off to the right. And basically, I'm driving the car, and that's all there is going with this car. Some people put stereos in them. I refuse to do it. That to me is I want to be out on that road, and I want the wind, and I want nature, and I want our Carolinas in my face. That's what I want when I'm out.
The sound of the wind and the sound of the engine. Now, you mentioned earlier concerning the car scene here and kind of the general range of cars that you see. What is kind of, from your experience going to some of these shows and with the car club, what are kind of the age ranges between some of the cars that have been going to these?
Well, with the British cars, Dan, old and older, I think it's probably. No, it's an interesting dilemma. I mean, we would love to get some younger members in the club, but because British cars have not been around for so long, that sort of, are people in their 30s and 40s familiar with them at all? Do they even know them unless their father had one? We are seeing, however, some interest in younger members coming in. Either their father had one or their grandfather had one, let's be honest. So we are seeing it in that sense. And also when we go to the general shows, the non-British, very specific shows, we generate an enormous amount of interest in these cars. So we are getting a lot of new members. Would we love to have members in our 20s and 30s? Sure. But we also have to face the reality there. But we do get a lot of interest in the cars when people see them. And we have a broad range. I mean, Triumph, MG, Morgan, TVR, Aston Martin, Arkney. I mean, it's a broad range of cars, and it's a really wonderful range of these quintessential eccentric British cars.
What's the oldest British car that you can recall seeing in our area?
That's a really good question. There are certainly some early MG TCs and TDs, which would date you into the early 50s, late 40s. Probably some earlier Bentleys also from the 40s. I mean, when my 34 Super Sports is up and running, that's probably going to be one of the older cars in the area as far as a British car goes.
Now, if somebody comes in say, a 2016 Jaguar F-Type, are you welcoming them with open arms?
With
Hey, everybody
open
come on in.
arms, absolutely, yeah. We have a lot of people who have the new Mini Coopers from BMW. I mean, it is a British heritage car in that sense of the word. So, absolutely. If you have a new Jaguar, a new Mini Cooper, we have people. We just had a member join who had a Fiat, 1969 Fiat Spider. Alfa Romeo still makes some really beautiful two-seaters. So, like I mentioned, that one common thread seems to be that love of that open-top two-seater roadster.
All right, we're actually kind of running up against the clock already here. This has been a lot of fun. One more time, anybody who's interested in the car club, and where can they see you next and how can they get involved?
Yeah, the best thing to do is our website, fbcc.sc.org, or just Google Foothills British Car Club, to be honest with you. The best place, we meet generally the second Tuesday of the month. That can vary in rotation, so check the website for that. Jack's Place, I mentioned that earlier. All the information is on our website in terms of the address. Meet us there. Great place to introduce and meet us to. Come to the Victoria Valley Vineyard event on November 1st. Open to the public. We're just going to be hanging out, talking about our cars, so come on and meet us there. Again, anybody who has an interest in these kind of cars, we would love to have you join us. And if you're looking for a car or a British car, come to us. We can certainly help you find the right one.
Paul, I'd like to thank you for coming to visit me today and talking about just your passion for the British cars. Hopefully, we can get you a few other folks to get in the club and kind of expand that community. And again, with the rarity of these cars and kind of the help that's needed to kind of keep them on the road, we certainly do want to still see them out there.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. And if you see us out there, give us a wave. We'll wave back.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. And thank you for watching this episode of Carolina Rides. Until next time, drive safely. See you later.